Hello, everyone. I'm Valora Washington and very delighted to have so many of you joining us today. Today, we're going to talk about how we can really activate anti-bias approaches in our work. And this is a topic that is so important now more than ever. It's important for all of us that we can really lift up and advocate for the rights and privileges and protection of everyone. I'm Valora Washington. I'm CEO of the CAYL Institute, and that is Community Advocates for Young Learners. It's a pleasure to have you join us here today as we have our monthly webinar series where we bring you timely, relevant, and immediately actionable topics of interest in the field of early childhood education. We bring to these conversations many values, our concern for representative leadership, diversity, on solutions, having impact and innovation, and building and sharing knowledge. We're really delighted that you've joined us in these conversations. Today, we're bringing forward a really important topic, and that is how we really activate anti-bias work with our children and families. This is something that we've all been talking about for a long time, but it's been our experience that many people are still asking how. How can they get started? How can they bring this deeply and more deeply into their programs? So today we're going to talk about how to activate anti-bias education. We're going to talk about this topic. It's been front and center in field for a very long time, and we will see how so much has changed, and we will also see how so much needs to be done. You're going to see and hear practical examples of how an anti-bias curriculum can actually be activated in our innovative programs. And we hope that each and every one of you will leave this conversation today wanting to know more, looking at the resources we will send you following the email, and asking, what can I do to strengthen and support anti-bias education in my own sphere of influence? So this is a notice to you that this webinar is being recorded, and we will have closed captioning as well. And we are talking about innovation. And Albert Einstein said that we can't solve our challenges at the same level that we were when we created them. So write in the chat and tell us what you think. Ask your questions. We really want to hear from you throughout this conversation. And the CAYL Institute has been thinking about how all of us can be architects of change very long time. We've prepared this book through Teachers College Press, which really gives a step-by-step way of how you can really activate your leadership in the field of early childhood education. We're here to affirmatively discuss this idea of activating anti-bias approaches. And you're going to hear some pretty innovative strategies today, but we want you to start wherever you are. You might not be able to do things the way that you're going to hear things being advanced today, but you start where you are. Clarify your principles and think about how you can make sure that you're supporting all children and families. And this is an era where each and every one of us has to dig deeper into this conversation. People are talking a lot about equity. They're talking about anti-bias. How do we actually put it in practice? How do we take the risk that we need to take to move this agenda forward? And how can we serve as bridges to bring more visibility to the issues of anti-bias education? Today, I'm extraordinarily excited because we have legends among us. Louise Derman-Sparks is someone I have known and supported for over 40 years. Her wisdom, insight, and courage has stood so strong during many decades when even mentioning anti-bias was something highly controversial, both inside the field and outside of our field. All of us owe a debt of gratitude to Louise for how much she has advanced both the field of early childhood education and the national dialogue about equity. And LeeKeenan is the next generation voice who has built upon Louise's legacy as a professor and practitioner. She was director of the Innovative Preschool at Tufts University for more than a decade. She's also co-producer of a new award-winning film about anti-bias education that you're going to hear about today. And finally, we have Nadia Jaboneta, who is a pre-K teacher today, leading a program that represents the best of what we all do in anti-bias approaches. And it is early educators like Nadia that give me so much inspiration and hope and practical examples of how today's leaders can move forward in this conversation. So I am deeply honored myself to be able to hear from each of these three generations of leaders who continue to do the work today. What a privilege and a treat for all of us. So join me in welcoming them today. And we're going to begin by hearing from the legendary and Louise Derman-Sparks. Louise, I personally want thank you for the courage that you've had over these decades and for your leadership and vision that has brought this work to us. So welcome. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. And I would say ditto back to you for all the support that you have given me. Anyway, hello, everybody. My task today is to give you some background for current anti-bias work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history, some of the achievements I see that we have made over the years, some of the challenges. And I really, again, want to welcome all of you to this very, what I can still consider very, very needed work. So how was, and why, and how was the anti-bias education approach created? In 1985, a group of preschool teachers from the Pacific Oaks Children's School, from the UCLA Lab School, and from the Los Angeles Unified School District decided to meet bi-weekly for a year. We were unhappy with limited, developmentally inappropriate multicultural education being suggested for young children at that time. So we decided to try to create a new, more meaningful approach to diversity and equity education with preschool-age kids. What we decided to do was a year-long teacher participatory research project where we all documented children's questions, comments, and ideas about human diversity, particularly focusing on gender and race, ethnicity, disability. And then we analyzed the data together in our biweekly meetings, and then we used it to create, try out, and evaluate activities to scaffold children's learning about themselves and others based on the data, of course, that we were getting, to try and hoping that we could create an approach that was much more meaningful to what kids really were thinking and needed to know and wanted to know. After the year of all that data collecting and analyzing and discussing, I wrote the first anti-bias education book called Anti-Bias Curriculum: Tools for Empowering Young Children. It's the one with the red cover that some of you may still have. And NAYC published it in 1989. So the idea has been around for a while now. Now, there were certain key foundational premises that we began with and that shaped, the kind of choices we made ultimately to put into the anti-bias book. First one was that children's development of self-concept and attitudes happens in the context of society's institutions and messages about identity and equity, as well as in their families. Up to now, for the most part, people focused on what children were learning in their families about who they were and about who other people were, about diversity or what biases they were learning. The reality is that the society in which we live in sends out very powerful messages that very much affect how young children understand who they are and who others are. Second premise is still that everyone forms both individual and multiple social identities beginning as young children. Social identities are created and defined by the larger society. So where systemic or structural biases are part of a society's institutions, these are also built into definitions of social identities, such as gender or racialized identity, or ethnic identity, cultural identity, class identity, and so on. And these definitions and the messages about different social identity groups strongly affect how children think and feel about themselves. So that while in early childhood education, we used to think that self-concept was really about the individual and the individual and the family, an anti-bias approach is saying that self-concept identity is about the individual, their family, and the larger context allow a power dynamics and dynamics of bias, prejudice, discrimination that exists in a society. The added dimension of social identity open new pathways to conceptualizing diversity and equity education with young children. So anti-bias education is a perspective and a framework, as well as a toolkit of practical activities. And it's for all aspects of an early childhood education program. Its mission, its policy, its organizational structure, its hiring practices, its professional development, teacher working conditions, relationships with families. Activities are actually only one small part of the larger whole of what an anti-bias education framework provides us. And last premise is that adults must also engage in growth on the goals of the anti-bias education approach to most effectively do anti-bias education with children and families. So it's really an approach for all of us. So what are some of the achievements to date? Well, on one level, we could count the number of books that have been sold, and those probably are around 1 million copies in English at this point, as well as being translated into several languages. And I recognize that buying a book doesn't necessarily mean that it's read or used, but it is an indicator of the fact that it has had pretty wide circulation among early childhood professionals. The second achievement I see is that the concept of anti-bias education, with both the need for it and the basic principles, has become part of our early childhood education and care professional canon. In other words, the basic knowledge that informs our field. Two examples would be the National Association for the Education of Young Children's recent Advancing Equity and Diversity in Early Childhood Education position statement, and many of the items in the newest version of NAEYC's Code of Ethical Conduct and Statement of Commitment, which both directly and indirectly support and reinforce an anti-bias education approach. A third achievement I see is that younger generations in early childhood care and education work are adding new thinking and practice based on their experiences on contemporary issues in social justice movements and new research about children's development. For example, all the work, new conceptualization of gender identity, particularly the idea that gender identity is much more fluid than early childhood educators in my generation thought it was. And this is a very exciting achievement for me because it says that there is a generative creativity, a generative power in the anti-bias approach that enables people to continue to use it and adapt it and add to it so that it works for each new generation. Another achievement is that we have now many added resources. One is the new film about anti-bias education, which Debbie will be talking about, and actually with Debbie co-produced and Nadia featured in it as one of the teachers. And also NAYC has produced several new resources now about equity education and anti-bias education. Another achievement, which I think is still a pragmatic one, but nevertheless an achievement, is the issue of teacher training. On the one hand, there are many more places that are using anti-bias book and or using the concept of anti-bias education to train early childhood teachers, both at community colleges and at four-year colleges, and also in in-service education. But the flip side of that is we still have a long way to go in this area, because training may be non-existent in many places. And in many places, it's only a very small part of what people get. And it really takes at least one full course for people to begin to feel comfortable with the ideas. So that's an area for all of you to keep working pretty hard on. Finally, I want to talk about the fact that there is now a lot of international activity in anti-bias education. And I find this exciting because the work in many other countries provides expanded perspectives and increased understanding of what children's development is about and what the principles and practices of anti-bias education are. So in countries such as England and Germany and Greece and Ireland, Japan, the Netherlands, people are adapting the anti-bias principle and goals to their specific cultural and social political contexts. So their work, and many of them have written several books about their work, illustrate that the principles of anti-bias education and the need, unfortunately, because prejudice is kind of a worldwide phenomenon at this point, that the principles cross national and cultural boundaries, while at the same time, the specific practices of anti-bias education needs to be adapted to the specific issues and cultures and so on that exist in each of the countries. And one example of this international connection is that I'm part of a group coordinating committee from several countries who are developing discussion conferences for people from all of their countries to participate in so that there can be an international cross-country conversation about the issues in anti-bias education. And we've had 2 of those. They've been very successful. And we hope to continue to build this kind of bridge among people. Then I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of anti-bias work, because anti-bias work does not develop in a simple, straightforward path for anyone. And I see kind of 4 kinds of challenges. One is just inherent in the work, that we're asking people to use a very new approach about topics that are often have been sort of silenced in their environment and what we could call a tender topic. And it also means learning as we work with it so that it doesn't follow some nice, neat recipe or linear line. Another challenge is that many educators have discomforts and anxieties about addressing issues of identity and diversity, and particularly of injustice. And these silences are often created and enforced by family, peer groups, the larger society, the expectations that we stay silent in the face of injustice. So people who are in leadership positions in early childhood education, program directors, faculty, college faculty, agency leaders, must create the working conditions and culture that encourages and supports teachers talking about anti-bias issues. Another challenge comes from disagreement from individuals who simply disagree with an anti-bias approach. And here I'm talking about people who are speaking for themselves, not organized national groups. And these would usually be individual families or a few families in a program who don't agree either with the whole approach, or don't agree with addressing specific issues, or don't agree with how you're addressing specific issues. And I think most of these are not insolvable, or they can be resolved by using the techniques we know for good family-teacher connections, even the techniques we use with kids, when we do conflict resolution. And finally, there are challenges from organized political groups who oppose any form of social justice education, not just anti-bias education, which is included in the general opposition to social justice education. Now, we have seen a rise in this kind of opposition, but it's also probably useful for you to know that we've had organized political opposition from the first year that the anti-bias book was published. And we have used a lot of creative ways to deal with this. And for the most part, we've been successful in finding ways to continue our work, even in the face of organized opposition. but it's clear that we need to be prepared to stand our ground and respond strategically. So I'm just going to end with a couple of thoughts. One, that anti-bias education works takes commitment, strategic planning, persistence, patience, and vision. It's work for the long haul, step by step. And also, on the flip side, that anti-bias work has set free impressive creative energy and work among early childhood education and care people in the United States and in many countries around the world. It's empowering the voices and work of early childhood educators to build programs where all children and families belong and thrive. As one teacher wrote, when anti-bias education came along, it felt like I could breathe. Other people wanted what I wanted for children and their families and for themselves. And I learned that I could do something. So thank you. And now I hand over to Debbie LeeKeenan, who will speak about the role of early childhood education program leaders in putting the anti-bias education core goals into daily practice. Hey, Debbie.
Okay, thanks, Louise. It's a pleasure to be here and certainly an honor to be part of this conversation with all of you today. I'm going to share my screen with start with a little PowerPoint. And I think we're going to send these out later, so you don't worry about taking notes. So yeah, the title of this webinar is about activating anti-bias education. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that, or prominent ways to do that, is thinking about these 4 goals, which I'm sure many of you on this call are familiar with, right? The goals of identity, diversity, justice, and action. These 4 goals are essential for all children and all adults. And they come as a package, building on each other, they're interdependent, and we're working on all 4 goals at the same time. So let's take a quick reminder about them. So the first goal is about identity, demonstrating self-awareness, confidence, family pride, and positive social identities. The second goal is about diversity, expressing comfort and joy with human diversity, accurate language for human differences, and deep caring human connections. Goal 3, oops, why is this not? Oops, sorry. There. Goal 3 is about justice, recognizing unfairness, having language to describe unfairness, and understanding that unfairness hurts. And goal number 4, about action, demonstrating empowerment and the skills to act with others or alone against prejudice or discrimination. I wanted to take a couple minutes to just comment on some of the misconceptions about these goals which are out there. As a consultant and as a director, I often had predominantly people who are working with white groups tell me, we don't need to work on goal number 1 because our kids don't have a racialized identity. They're just individuals. We really need to just work on goal number 2 about diversity. Now, we know this is not true, right? Because all people, all children have identity. White kids have to develop identities too. What does it mean to be white? In contrast, I've often had teachers who are working predominantly with children and families of color tell me they do not need to focus on goal number 2 because they're already diverse. They just need to focus on goal number 1 to build children's self-esteem which racism has denied them. That's not exactly correct either, because it's not that some people are diverse and others are not. I like to say that diversity is about the relationship between us. So really what I'm saying is that everyone needs to understand people who are different than them, and all of us need to understand all of our identities, who we are. And then goals 3 and 4, there are a lot of misconceptions about those too. We often have teachers tell us they don't want to do those. Why do they say that? Often because they're not sure how to respond to children's negative comments or questions about differences. They feel uncomfortable with that. They feel helpless. They're worried they're going to offend someone. Often we have educators that might also say that they think anti-bias education is not developmentally appropriate and it's going to upset young children, or they're too young for it. Or is it really? Will it upset their parents? So the bottom line, of course, is that these goals are crucial. It's a wonderful way, it's a key way, essential way to implement anti-bias education. I've had many programs decide to post the goals on the walls of their programs, in the halls, in their classrooms, as a reminder for everyone to be constantly thinking about them. So now I want to talk a little bit about the role of the leader and what do equity leaders need to do. And some of the ideas are kind of basic overall, and some I'm going to focus a little bit on what to do with staff and what to do with families. So first, I feel we need to create a safe and brave space for adults, and of course for children, to engage in reflection, learning, and what I like to call productive disequilibrium. So creating this culture for anti-bias work involves creating a community that fosters belonging, dialogue, reflection, risk-taking, and resilience. The goal is to create this space where everyone can offer their perspectives, take risks, make mistakes, fall down, and get up, and contribute at their own pace. This requires everyone learning from and with each other. So from the very first day, you need to create this welcoming environment in which children, families, and teachers feel respected and trusted. We do this by making sure everyone feels visible. You can do getting to know each other activities at your first adult meetings, whether it's with your staff or with families, people sharing where their names come from, their identity stories, sharing cultural artifacts from their backgrounds, or a significant book growing up. What stood out for you, either in a positive way or a negative way? Risk-taking is a key part of anti-bias work, because being able to make mistakes, that fall down and get up, that's when real learning occurs, right? Constructivist theory tells us when people feel supported in their learning, disequilibrium and discomfort can lead to real growth. The leader's job, I believe, is to create this space for these conversations where people do not feel under attack, but may feel some discomfort. Sometimes adults confuse feeling discomfort with being unsafe. These are not the same. I had one program leader tell me her goal was to move from a culture of kindness to a culture of courage. We want that safe and brave space. So what is the definition of that? So a safe space is a physical or metaphorical place for people, usually of marginalized identities, to feel free of judgment or harm. A safe space can provide a break from judgment, unsolicited opinions, and having to explain yourself. It allows people to feel supported and respected. A brave space encourages dialogue, recognizing difference and holding each person accountable to do the work of sharing experiences and coming to new understandings. A feat that's often hard and typically uncomfortable. And it's not either or. It's not that you're either going to have a safe space or a brave space. Obviously, we need both, because we know that's when change happens. So another strategy for leaders is to form an equity inclusion team. Develop a team that oversees equity initiatives and ensures commitment, accountability, and coordination with equity activities. You don't want it just to be the director or the leader's focus. The team should include stakeholders from the organization, teachers, family members, advisory boards, community members who are committed to this equity mission and can act as conduits for these efforts into their various constituencies. I think a key point is we want to make sure the equity inclusion team doesn't become diverted and just kind of do like multicultural potluck dinners. Yes, that's a community builder, but we also want to make sure we're addressing the underlying inequities in our organizations. A third strategy is being intentional and strategic and bringing this equity lens to everything you do. Some quick examples: look at your mission statement. Equity should be front and clear, whether it's part of one mission statement or whether you have a separate DEI statement. Either way, it should be transparent. And you also, of course, want, it's not just having this statement in the handbook or on your website, but making sure that all the stakeholders are discussing it, reviewing it, embracing it, questioning it, thinking about it. It has to be in alive, that statement. In your budget, you should have an equity, a budget for equity work. That could be materials, it could be professional development, it could be for recruitment. You could identify specific fundraising projects related to your equity strategic plan. Maybe it's getting new children's books or getting things translated for your community. And of course, policies and procedures. Looking at your staff and family handbooks, the policies and procedures communicate the values and goals of your program, of your mission, and they should explicitly reflect your equity mission. So some examples I'm thinking about, what kind of holiday policy or discipline policies do you have? Do they reflect an equity stance? Now, I'd also like to talk about engaging teachers and staff in equity work. So the first thing is about recruiting and retaining staff committed to equity and anti-bias education. I often have program leaders tell me, oh, I want to serve a more diverse families and children, more diverse communities. How do I get them to come here? I always say the first thing is think about who are the people in your program? Who are your teachers? Who are your staff? Who are the leaders? They should reflect the diversity and community of the world. So you want to be strategic in your equity outreach and looking for staff. Make sure your website, your PR materials, your flyers, your position statement are clear on what you're looking for in terms of equity. You also want to include questions about equity and anti-bias education in your interview protocols, right, when hiring. And of course, implementing strategies that ensure that all staff feel included, visible, and engaged in decision-making. It's not just bringing them to the program, right? How are you going to retain them? How are you going to mentor them? How are they going to continue to grow in your program? Another point under working with staff is to supervise and coach staff in anti-bias and anti-racist work. I use the word easy, but I mean, how you embed it in what you're doing is, I think of everything I do as a leader. So I'm thinking about professional goal setting. When I have my staff do their annual individual professional goals, I make sure they're identifying specific ABAR goals and to be accountable for meeting these equity expectations. I also think of goal setting on several levels, kind of school-wide, classroom-wide, or team-wide, and individually. What are the goals you're setting? What are you going to do? How are you going to work towards them? And how can I, as your supervisor, support you in that? And then also facilitating collaboration and engaging staff in critical thinking during staff meetings and professional development about ABE. We all know time is precious. Let's not waste whatever hour or 90 minutes, whether it's monthly, bi-weekly, you have for staff meetings. I always say, send out an email with all the laundry list kind of details and use the time you have together to have these kinds of conversations, courageous conversations, talking about anti-bias curriculum planning, anti-bias assessment, anti-bias environments. One of the things we used to do at Elliott Pearson was I would have each classroom team be responsible for a different meeting, and they the next staff meeting, and they would share an anti-bias dilemma. They would present either a question that came up that month, an activity they tried that either went well or didn't go well, and we would have a conversation and get feedback from that. So these ideas of using communities of practice is a good way to use your staff meeting time. Another way is the film that was recently released. Now this film is available for free. It really is organized around the 4 goals. And what I'd like to mention, to be clear, is that this film is not to say, here is how you should do it, but rather it's a provocation of some teachers, Nadia being one of them, who implement this in their daily practice and how they related that to their context. So I think it's very important when you use the film, as whether you do it by chapter or show the whole film, that you really think about, what does this mean to your community, to your setting? What would you do differently? What are the challenges you would find? And then another way to do at your staff meeting time is to have different kinds of small group conversations. And these are just some examples of prompt questions you can use, whether it's about the 4 goals, your own journey, looking at your environment, how you interact with children, or involving working with families. And then the final strategy I want to share is kind of engaging families in doing anti-bias work. Well, the classroom teacher is the main person who usually interfaces with families. The leader also has a role in terms of engaging families with anti-bias education. And the first thing I like to think about is setting the program climate. We set the tone, providing opportunities for families and staff to socialize, dialogue, and learn from each other, and to incorporate that funds of knowledge approach, that children come to school with all these skills and learning and from their dispositions, from their families, that we need to acknowledge and embrace. We want to communicate explicitly about our equity and anti-bias goals. We want to provide opportunities for families and staff to learn together about anti-bias education. One example I always think about is directors usually put out a newsletter on a regular basis. Have an anti-bias section of your newsletter that you always are talking about it. New books that are going on that you know about in anti-bias, children's books, or examples of what children are talking about in the classroom and what you're doing, how you're handling the teachable moments, sharing that with families on a regular basis. I also think the leaders need to reach out to families, particularly families that have traditionally been marginalized by different programs. Get out in the community, talk to families, find out what they're interested in. And finally, my last point, probably one of my most important points that I'm sharing, is about embracing complexity. We can't do anti-bias work without engaging families, and we can't do anti-bias work without embracing complexity and conflict. It's inevitable, right? With different perspectives, there's going to be disagreement. We have to see that as we don't want to avoid conflict. We want to manage it, maintain it, and embrace it. So that involves us moving away from that kind of right or wrong or dichotomous or either or thinking, and rather embrace these multiple viewpoints, looking for a third space or common ground when a child may be caught in the middle between home and school. We want to find, how can we find some common agreement or a common space to have these conversations, at the same time acknowledging sometimes that may not be possible to have common ground and we need to agree to disagree. So those were some ideas in thinking about the role of the leader. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nadia, who is going to talk about it from the classroom perspective.
Thanks, Debbie. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share screen as well. Let's see. 1 second. Here we go. So I'm super excited to be here with all of you today, and especially with the other amazing panelists. Thank you so much for including me in this conversation. Our goal for all of you today is to really look at this, as Debbie said, as a provocation. And I will be sharing with you a glimpse of one of the ways that anti-bias education can look like in action. And our goal for all of you is that these conversations will continue, this thinking, this reflection will continue. It's very important to really think about when For example, often people ask me, well, what are some examples of activities and materials that I can use in my classroom? I really want to be an anti-biased education expert and bring this to my families in the classroom. So it's really important to remember that along with the materials, along with the activities, you really need to start with the self work, that you can't do just the activities and the materials without really doing a lot of reflection, really learning together, and really, like Debbie said, productive disequilibrium. And it's really important to do your research, use facts to help guide your thinking, and really be aware that there isn't one way to do this. I can't give you one special formula on how you can do this work. We all come from so many different contexts. We're on a different part of our social justice journeys. And as Valora said, start where you are and know that, you might make a mistake. We might make mistakes, and we're going to move forward and support each other in doing this work. I really encourage you not to do this work alone, to find a team member, like Debbie was talking about, creating a team with a teacher in your classroom, with a teacher from a different school, really finding a thinking partner and engaging in teacher research together. When we came back from shelter in place, it was really important for our team to really think about how we were going to really learn along with the children and the families, in really looking at them in the classroom as humans who come with so many strengths, looking at it from a strength-based way, and especially thinking about how children are naturally drawn to have relationships. What was going to be our role as the adults in these children's lives? And really studying what do children already know about what is fair, what is unfair, and really putting on this role of learning along with them and being a researcher. We learned from the folks at the National Scientific Council on the Developing Child, and Alison Gopnik as well, how children are natural social scientists. They're seeking relationships from the second that they are born. I was able to stay home for a larger chunk of time than I had imagined when I had baby Luna, who you see here in the photos, and able to do my own informal research as a parent, but also as an educator, and seeing this research and connecting the theory to practice. And wow, from the moment Luna was born, she was seeking relationships with our family, with her sisters, making this eye contact, touching them, really seeking them out. So again, thinking about our role as the important adults in these young children's lives, and how they're not born as these empty vessels. Children are naturally seeking these connections. When children are 3 months old, when they're babies, they're already preferring to look at faces of their own race. So this is an example. Thank you to the folks at the Children's Community School, Philadelphia, who put out this graphic. Again, doing your research, learning about young children's development. Schema theory really helped us at our school really learn about how children are constantly noticing similarities and differences. They're sorting and classifying everything. As teachers, we're providing opportunities all the time with materials for them to do this. But when children do this with people, most people feel uncomfortable. Children use schema explorations to learn about differences in people, whether they're talking about different body shapes or different hair or different skin color. So really normalizing that conversation, supporting these conversations, and finding the joy in seeing things that are different, things that are the same about us. Children know a lot about what's fair and unfair. Research shows us that as young as 12 months, young children expect resources to be divided equally between characters in a scene. And in preschool, children will protest if they get less than a peer. So some stories just to show you what this looks like in practice. Here are children who are just engaging in natural conversations that emerge about looking at each other's different eyes and different hair, and noticing their different skin color and embracing it and noticing who has nail polish, who doesn't have nail polish. Again, children are seeking these connections naturally. So thinking about our role in supporting these conversations. When Luna was 14 months old, she created this game, which we called the mail game. She discovered our junk mail drawer and she would go through it every single day. And one by one, she would make sure to find every single family member in our home and give them one piece of mail. So she'd go back and forth throughout our home. And one day she realized, wait, there's someone else in our family that I haven't been including. So she gave Chico, the dog, I looked over and she was giving him a piece of mail. So again, 14 months old, and she's already thinking about being inclusive. What is fair? What is not fair? Also, she's seeking these relationships and finding a way to connect with her family. Also, the environment, what are we providing in the environment for children to see themselves reflected and seeing their friends, learning about what is the same about them and their friends, what is different, and embracing that, really embracing the joy in these differences. Engaging in conversations about their families, their extended families, about who they are, about their identity. Your children are sharing each other's portfolios and reminiscing on activities they did together, looking at pictures of their family in their portfolios, having conversations about their friends' hair, their eyes, their drawings that they made, their skin color paint that they made. Having opportunities for children to see themselves reflected in the materials, whether it's dolls or books. Again, just finding the beauty in our differences. One of the things that we worked on was creating our own skin tone paint. So children mixed lots of different colors of paint until they found what they felt was a match, and they wanted to name their paint. So these are some examples of what each child wanted to name their paint. And some of them connected it to things they saw in their environment, whether it was dry sand, sand rock, or strawberry cupcake, dark chocolate. So really honoring the children's thinking and honoring their words. Again, using books as a tool to express comfort and joy with human diversity has been something that we really has been supportive in our thinking with young children, critical thinking, as well as having books that represent children, just all kinds of children, having fun, being regular kids, regular families. So not it always having to be a book about an issue or something that is an inequity. Offering children colored pencils or crayons with different skin colors every day of the year, not just when you're doing a special project. Learning about identity. Who are you? What do you want people to know about you? In this example, this child wanted us to write his words down. He wanted people to know that his skin color is peanut butter and a little bit of chocolate. So again, honoring children and the family language that they use to describe themselves. Teachers engaging in these conversations with the children is so important. Being proactive. In this example, children were really wondering if the sign on the women's bathroom was fair. Was it fair to have bathrooms that are gendered? Was it fair that the sign for the women was wearing a dress? Do all women wear a dress? Inviting the families to think along with us, to learn about the identity of the classroom, learn about their friend's identity. So here's a parent looking at all the children's identity boards that they had made. Inviting families to share what their family identities are. What is a book that's special to your family? Come on in and share it, read it to us. What is something that you enjoy celebrating in your family? Whether it's a tradition, a celebration, a holiday. Apologize, this is a little blurry, but last summer I was looking at books online. I wanted to provide the children with some books that really showed examples of embracing differences and similarities. And I found this book, which was published in 1991, and I was really excited to get it because it was written by a group of kindergartners. And the group of children I was working with were heading off to kindergarten soon. And I ordered it and I saw that Louise, Derman-Sparks, wrote the foreword for it. So very exciting. And the children saw it get delivered. They knew it was going to be our new book. We opened it together. And typically I read books ahead of time before reading it to children, but I felt really comfortable and safe reading it to them. So I went ahead and started reading it. And right away, the children started saying, well, wait, they forgot about this, or wait, they forgot about that. Well, wait, that's not like my family. So because I had told them it was written by young children, they said, hey, maybe we can write a book and add some things that they forgot. So that became our summer project, was to use this book, but add things. And as they would say, spread the word and add things that this group of children had forgotten. So I'm going to go ahead and share this book with you today, and I will end with that. We are all alike. We are all different. Written and illustrated by the Coyote class. We are all alike. We are all people. We are all humans. We are all different. We do not look the same. We have different color eyes. Some people wear glasses. Some people are blind. We have different color hair. Some of us have curly hair. Some of us have straight hair. Some people have no hair. We are all alike. We all have skin. Our skin protects our bones and keeps our blood inside of our bodies. We are all different. We have different color skin. Some people are black, brown, or white. There are more skin colors than you know of. Skin color is so important. It is a part of who we are. We get our skin color from our ancestors, our family from a long time ago. Our skin color comes from melanin. Our skin is a gift. Be happy that you are you. Sorry, the screen is covering some of the words. We all have bodies. We are all different. Some of us are girls. Some of us are boys. Some of us are transgender. You can feel like a girl and a boy. You can be not a boy or a girl. You can be neither. Some people are he or she or they. Just be yourself. We are all alike. We all have families. We are all different. Some of us live with our dads. Some of us live with our mom and dad. Some of us live with our mom sometimes and sometimes with our dad. Some of us live with our foster family. Some of us live with our pets. Some people live with two moms or with grandparents. We are all alike. We all have homes. Some people don't have a home. All people need water, food, clothes, a home, and love. We are all different. Some of us live in apartments. Some of us live in houses. Some of us have two homes. Some of us have one home. Some people live in tents or in campers. We are all alike. We all learn through play. We are all different. We learn and play in different ways. We all need something different to be successful. We are all alike. We all live on this earth together. We are all different. We help make the earth a better place in different ways. We all march for Black Lives Matter. We all march for pride. We all march for clean water. The Coyotes are all social justice leaders. We are all alike. We are all different. We are a family. The end. So now we will be bringing everyone back to have a panel discussion. Thank you, everybody, for letting me share a little bit of what anti-bias education can look like in real life with young children, families, and teachers.
Nadia, that is amazing. Thank you so much to you and to Debbie and Louise. It is really spectacular how far this work has come. So Louise and I were talking earlier about how the book that was so excited about it, and to see how your children today have so much broadened these ideas of bias. I mean, even when the book came out in 1991, Louise, if you might even talk about that, it was so controversial, and surely we weren't talking about transgender people or people who have two moms and so forth. So the work has really come very far. And we do realize, as some of our people are saying in the chat, that many schools and programs are not ready for these messages, and there's still resistance to these kinds of messages. People are asking in the chat, I wonder if you can speak to the fact that how do you deal with the fact that there is resistance? And I would say, if you could start, Louise, because there's been resistance historically within the field of early childhood education, as well as from external sources, correct?
Yeah. Well, how do you start? I mean, you have to start first by really doing your homework, so that I think, and there are tools for getting started now that didn't exist when we were first beginning it. And for instance, the fact that it's now official policy to include anti-bias ideas in your work, according to NAUIC. It's official professional policy. That's really important. There's much more support for it from people within the field. So that's one thing. I think a second thing is you have to find if there are any allies, another teacher in your school, a parent in your classroom, anyone that you can start to work with and to talk about what would be the best way to approach beginning to bring in ideas of equity and diversity. And you develop a strategic plan. So you may not be able to start with some of the issues, but maybe there's always some issue that you can start with, which has to, and I think the focus has to be on the well-being of children. And that what we're doing is trying to create a program where children can really thrive, and they can thrive in their classroom and they can thrive in the world. And just start. You start with maybe smaller steps than somebody else can take. And I think it almost always works. Now, but you have to do this in context with other people. And as you start with a small group, you begin to find some other people. Maybe you make connections in your local community. There are faith-based groups. There are community organizing groups that are concerned with improving education. Because anti-bias work is really an activity. It's a societal issue. It isn't just an educational issue. And while our piece of the work is educational, we have to connect it and get our allies from within our education field and outside of it. But I guess what I'm saying is there's always a place to start. You have to take courage and don't do it alone. Even one other person working with you on this makes a really big difference. And
Absolutely.
Then let it grow.
Absolutely. Booker T. Washington once said, cast down your bucket where you are. Start where you are. And Debbie, this is what I see you doing in your program, keeping the focus on children and families.
Right.
That's what we're trying to promote, the well-being of children. That's what you did in your programs, Debbie.
Right, exactly. You're never going to have everyone 100%. So you have to start again with the children. When I've had pushback and resistance, I really, it's not coming from the outside. I say it's not like we're introducing this. The children are already aware. They're already talking about it. They see it. They hear it. If we don't respond, what is that message? It is a message. So silence is giving a message that it's not okay, this topic is not okay, or it's not good to have questions. So again, it depends on your context. If one type of difference, social identity feels too hard, find one that works. I often talk about ability differences as a way to start. because often we know that every child learns in a different way, and that people seem to take that first. So that's one that I often talk about. You can start with that we all learn differently. And let's, think about that. What does so-and-so need? Fair is not equal, right? To be fair, I have to make sure each of you have what you need for your learning. So yeah.
Yeah. And Nadia, I'm so excited to see what this generation of new young educators like yourself are really bringing and expanding our view of what anti-bias education can be. I, for one, am very encouraged and excited by the work you've done. The way that you have taken the book Alike and Different, and your children moved that from that 1991 context to today. It is very exciting to see that work. And I commend you and all of the people like you on this call, young professionals who are really pushing that envelope. Thank you for your work.
So Laura, I thought of one thing I wanted to add, which is just, that when the book first came out, we actually, I and the book was accused of being anti-Christian and being anti-American because of some of the issues that were in the book. Like saying that not everybody celebrates Christmas was one example about that, or that for many Native Americans, Thanksgiving was not a day of celebration. And that attack also brought in new allies.
Mm-hmm.
So particularly the issue of being anti-Christian brought in the support of the National Council of Churches and the whole network of early childhood programs that were connected with churches that were in the National Council of Churches. So there's a whole lot of people who agree with us. And we can't let the people who don't stop us and stand in our way.
Absolutely. This webinar is just 1 hour, and it really introduces you to innovative ways that we're moving forward as activists, and the way that we're moving forward as architects of change in this profession. You can expect to receive a follow-up email that will provide you links and access to a lot of resources so that you can deeper into the conversation. We're also going to be sharing with each of you right now in this chat a link where you can click, and you will have an opportunity as soon as we complete this webinar to interact with our panelists today and ask them questions yourself. So we're encouraging each of you to push that link and join us if you would like to have conversation with our panelists. So we are focused on innovation, and we are in our era of innovation. We talked last month about how to make space for play in community spaces. Today, we've talked about active anti-bias approaches. We hope you'll join us next month, where we're going to be talking about how you inspire joy with all children. Thank you so much for joining the CAYL Institute to talk about this conversation today. And on behalf of our entire team, we are grateful for your constant willingness to join us in having these challenging and courageous conversations. Please click the link and join us if you'd like to have conversations with this dynamic panel. And thank you, Louise. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Nadia, for your courage, your wisdom, and your talent that you're bringing to this field. I'll see you soon when we have the webinar link. Thank you. Bye-bye.